Have you ever felt time collapse around you? Like someone hit mute on the universe and all you can hear is your own breath, ragged, shallow, while the ground beneath you gives way? That was me, the moment HR pushed a single piece of paper across the desk. No warning, no mercy. Just numbers, cold, brutal numbers, telling me I was suddenly worth 60% less. In that instant, I wasn't just losing money, I was losing the life I'd built. But that was also the moment everything changed. You know that feeling when the world just stops, like your ears are full of cotton and you can hear your own heartbeat. That's what happened when Melissa from HR slid that paper across her stupid IKEA-esque 60% pay cut effective immediately. I just sat there staring at the number like it might change. If I looked at it hard enough, 60%. I didn't cry, not there anyway. I smiled, actually smiled, and said, I'll need 24 hours to consider this offer, like I was some kind of corporate robot, like I hadn't just been gutted. The crying happened in my car, heaving ugly mascara everywhere, sobbing that fogged up my windows. I sat in the parking garage for 45 minutes, just breaking. Because what do you do when the company you've given 9 years of your life to decides you're worth less than half of what they paid you yesterday? Sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm Rachel Martins Ray, 38 single mom, to an amazing 10-year-old boy named Jonah. And up until that meeting, I was the director of client solutions at Solvara Systems. God, this is still hard to talk about even 3 years later. If you're watching this, could you just hit like or subscribe or whatever, or leave a comment telling me where you're watching from? I need to know. I'm not screaming into the void here that someone else understands what it's like to have your entire life threatened in a 15-minute meeting. Anyway, Solvara, I started there when it was just 20 people in a converted loft. The kind of startup where everyone believes they're changing the world. You know, we had the ping pong table, the free snacks, the happy hours, all that. That seems so meaningful until it isn't. I was hired as a client manager, but I worked my ass off, stayed late, came in weekends, missed school events, postponed vacations, all the things you're not supposed to do, but you do anyway, because you're building something, because you believe in it. And I was good, really good. Within 3 years, I was managing our top 10 accounts clients that brought in over 70% of our revenue. I knew their systems, their problems, their birthdays, their kids' names. These weren't just accounts to me. They were relationships I had personally built. When Jonah's dad decided fatherhood and marriage were stifling his potential and moved to Portland with a yoga instructor named Willow. Yes, really, those client relationships became even more important. They weren't just my career. They were my lifeline. My security. By year 5, I had a team of 8. I had equity. I had a salary that meant I could afford our mortgage and Jonah's asthma medications without having to choose between groceries and utilities. For the first time since the divorce, I could breathe. Then Dynavex Corporation bought us. I can still remember the all-hands meeting. Marcus Tran, our founder, standing on that little stage in the cafeteria, telling us how exciting this next chapter would be. How Dynavex's resources would help us scale our vision, everyone clapping like seals. While I sat there wondering why Marcus couldn't look any of us in the eye, $3 million. That's what I found out later. He got in the acquisition, $3 million, and he was fully vested the rest of us. Our equity was worth pennies with 4 more years to vest under the new terms. The first 6 months weren't terrible: new email signatures, new procedures, more meetings, but I still had my team, my clients, my salary. Then the redundancy, as first they came for the junior people, then mids. My team shrank from 8 to 3, but our client load didn't decrease. If anything, it got worse. I was working 70-hour week every Monday morning. I'd walk into the office and avoid looking at the chairs that used to be filled by voices I knew by heart. The silence they left behind scream. I began to carry a kind of quiet dread. Like any day now, someone would tap me on the shoulder and say it was my turn. But instead of slowing down, I pushed harder. There's a kind of desperation that looks like ambition if you dress it in productivity. Answering emails at 300 a.m., having panic attacks in the bathroom between meetings, Jonah started asking why I was always on my laptop, why I couldn't come to his soccer games, why I looked so tired all the time, and still, I thought I was safe. I was managing the relationships that brought in most of our revenue. They needed me. That's what I told myself, right up until Melissa from HR scheduled that quick touch base. I should have known something was wrong when I walked in and saw Gary Mitchell from Dinovex sitting there, Gary with his 2 white veneers and his Rolex, that he made sure everyone noticed, Gary, who'd been sent from corporate to optimize the acquisition. Rachel, he said, he never called me. Ray, we've been looking at the org structure, and we feel there's an opportunity to realign your compensation with market standards. Market standards like I was a commodity, Melissa slid. The paper across the new salary was right there in bold, $52,000, down from $13,000. This reflects the changing nature of your role. Gary said, like he was telling me I'd won a prize. We're centralizing most client management functions at headquarters. You'll be transitioning to more of a regional support position. Translation, we're taking your clients, your authority, and most of your paycheck. But we still need you to do the work. You'll maintain your current responsibilities during the transition period. Of course, he added. Of course, we need your decision by tomorrow. Melissa said, not meeting my eyes. If this new arrangement doesn't work for you, we understand, but we'll need to immediately begin searching for someone who's aligned with our new structure. Someone cheaper. She meant someone desperate. They knew I was a single mom. They knew about Jonah's medical needs. They knew about my mortgage. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an execution. I need 24 hours. I said, voice steady despite the screaming in my head. It was like my lungs stopped working properly, like all the oxygen had been vacuumed out of the room. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, slow and thunderous, while my brain scrambled to keep my face calm. I have some questions about the transition plan and reporting structure. Gary nodded, pleased with my professionalism. Melissa looked relieved that I wasn't causing a scene. I don't remember walking back to my desk. I don't remember packing up my laptop. All I remember is the fluorescent lights flickering above me like an interrogation room, and my hands trembling so violently that I had to sit down before I dropped something. I just remember sitting in my car shaking, wondering how I was going to tell Jonah. We might lose our house. That's when my phone rang. Jade Lynn, my old colleague who'd left Solvara 6 months earlier. I almost didn't answer, but then I thought, what the hell? Maybe she was calling to catch up. Maybe I could pretend for 5 minutes that my life wasn't imploding. Hey stranger, I said, trying to sound normal. Ray, she said, I've been trying to reach you all week. Have you checked your LinkedIn messages? I hadn't. I'd been too busy keeping the clients happy, keeping my team from quitting, keeping everything from falling apart. Listen, Jade said, I'm at Quantive now. You know, they're Dinovex's biggest competitor, right? My boss has been asking about you a lot. We need someone with your client experience. Would you be open to a conversation? I looked at the Solvara building through my windshield at the logo. They'd replaced our original one with Ingers. I thought about Gary and his watch and his veneers. I thought about Marcus Tran, who'd sold us out and disappeared to his beach house in Malibu. Actually, I said I think tonight would be perfect. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. I wasn't stupid. I knew what calling Dinovex's competitor would mean. There'd be no going back, but they'd already decided. I was disposable. What did I owe them? When I got home, I paid the babysitter, checked on Jonah, already asleep. I'd missed bedtime again, and opened my laptop. I spent an hour looking through my employment contract. No non-compete clause. Solvara had been too small, too idealistic when I joined to bother with those. Dinovex had issued new contracts to later hires, but they hadn't gotten around to us legacy employees. Yet their mistake. At 9:30, I called Jade back. Can you set up a meeting with your boss tomorrow morning before I have to give Solvara my answer about something that bad? She asked. Worse? I said, they're cutting my salary by 60%, but keeping all my responsibilities. Actually adding more. Jade was quiet for a moment. Then give me 15 minutes. She said, I'm texting Elliot right now. Elliot Cross, the CEO of Helix Technologies, Dinovex's biggest rival and the company that had been trying to get our clients for years. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Rachel, this is Elliot Cross from Helix. Jade tells me we need to meet first thing tomorrow. His voice was warm, direct, no corporate. Yes. I said, I think we might be able to help each other. I'm guessing Dinovex is finally doing their post-acquisition purge. Something like that. How does 7:30 am sound? I can meet you at the Westside Cafe away from both our offices. Jade says you have a decision to make tomorrow. 7:30 works, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded after we hung up. I sat on my couch for a long time staring at nothing. Was I really doing this? Was I really considering jumping ship to the competition? But it wasn't a ship anymore, was it? It was a sinking lifeboat, and Dinovex was throwing people overboard to save themselves. I opened my laptop again and pulled up my client files. Not the official CRM data that belonged to the company, but my personal notes. 9 years of relationship details, who to call when contracts got stuck in legal, which CTOs were planning system overhauls, which companies were unhappy with Dinovex's recent service changes. Information that wasn't confidential exactly but was valuable, very valuable. I'd built these relationships, I'd earned this knowledge, and tomorrow I was going to find out what it was worth. I closed my laptop and checked on Jonah again, watching him sleep for a few minutes. His little chest rising and falling, the inhaler on his nightstand, the science fair ribbon pinned to his bulletin board. I'm gonna fix this, I whispered. I promise I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay awake thinking about what I was about to do, wondering if I was being impulsive, wondering if I was being disloyal but loyal to what a company that no longer existed, except it as a line item on Dinovex's balance sheet, people who saw me as nothing but a number they could cut by morning. I knew exactly what I was going to say to Elliot Cross and to Gary Mitchell. I dressed carefully, my best suit, the one I saved for closing big deals. Hair, perfect makeup, flawless armor. I dropped Jonah at school, hugged him extra tight, and told him I loved him. You, okay, Mom? He asked, looking up at me with his serious little face. I will be, I said, and for the first time in months I believed it. The Westside Cafe was quiet at 7:30, just a few early risers with laptops and commuter mugs. Elliot was easy to spot, tall silver at the temples, dressed casually but expensively. Jade sat beside him, gave me a small wave. I took a deep breath and walked over to their table. Rachel Martin's Elliot stood, offered his hand. I've heard a lot about you from Jade, of course, and from just about every client we've tried and failed to steal from Solvara over the years. I smiled. Well, those clients might be more open to conversations now. Elliot's eyebrows raised. Is that right? Why don't you sit down and tell me exactly what's happening over there? So I did all of it. The acquisition, the culture change, the way they were gutting the company while expecting the same results, the impossible workloads, the pay cut. Elliot listened without interrupting. When I finished, he glanced at Jade, then back at me. Ray, he said, we've been waiting for you to call us for a long time. Those words hit me harder than I expected. After months of feeling invisible, of being overlooked, dismissed, downgraded, here was someone telling me that I was seen, that I mattered, and not just as a cog in the machine, but as a force of value. We've been waiting for you to call us for a long time. That sentence hung in the air between us. I remember taking a sip of my coffee to buy myself a moment, because suddenly this wasn't just about saving my job. This was about something bigger. What exactly does that mean? I asked. Elliot leaned forward. It means we've tried to recruit you 3 times over the past 2 years. Each time, your loyalty to Solvara won out, but Dinovex doesn't deserve that loyalty, and frankly, we're prepared to make you an offer. That shows exactly how much we value your relationships and expertise. He pushed a folder across the table. Inside was an offer letter. Director of Strategic Partnerships, $16,000 base, salary, 25%. Annual bonus, potential health benefits that would cover Jonah's medications completely, stock options. I couldn't finish the sentence. Fair market value for someone with your skills and client book, Elliot said, plus a signing bonus. If you can start within 2 weeks. I stared at the number. It was $35,000 more than I'd been making at Solvara, more than 3 times what Dinovex was offering me. Why? I asked why this much. Elliot didn't hesitate. Because we've lost 8 major contracts to Solvara in the past 4 years, all accounts you managed. Because our research tells us that when clients work with you, their retention rate is 94%, compared to an industry average of 71%. Because I've personally had 3 CTOs tell me they stay with Solvara because of you. He took a sip of his coffee. You're not just an account manager, Rachel. You're a competitive advantage, one that Dinovex is too stupid to recognize. I felt something shift inside me, a lifetime of being underestimated, of working twice as hard for half the credit, of smiling through meetings where men repeated my ideas louder and got praised for them. And here was someone who actually saw my value. There's one more thing, Jade said quietly. Tell her Elliot. Elliot nodded. We've heard rumors that Dinovex is planning to move all client services overseas within 8 months. They're using these pay cuts to push people out, so they don't have to pay severance. My stomach dropped. How do you know that their new VP of operations came from Quantrax? He did the same thing there 3 years ago. It's his playbook. 8 months. They weren't just cutting my pay, they were eliminating my job entirely. They just wanted me to train my replacement. First, I need to pick up my son from school at 3. I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. But I can come back to Helix with you right now. I'd like to see the office before I make a final decision. Elliot smiled, of course. And we'd like you to meet the team. 3 hours later. I walked back into Dinovex. Regional Office 8 with a signed offer letter from Helix in my bag and a plan forming in my mind. Gary was waiting in the conference room. Looking impatient, Melissa sat beside him, a folder with my name on it in front of her. Rachel, Gary said, not bothering to stand. Have you made your decision? I sat down across from them, placed my hands flat on the table, smiled. I have some questions. First, I said. Gary sighed theatrically. We really need a simple yes or no today. As we explained, we're restructuring the entire department. I understand, but I manage our 10 largest accounts. I'd like to know who will be handling the Carlo implementation next month and the Birchman contract renewal in June. Gary waved his hand dismissively. We'll distribute those responsibilities appropriately. That's not something you need to worry about. Actually, I do worry about it. I promised Tasha at Carlo that I'd personally oversee their transition, and Rick at Birchman specifically asked for my involvement in the renewal discussions. Those are company relationships, not personal ones, Gary said, his voice hardening now about the offer. Is it true you're moving client services overseas? In 8 months, I asked. The color drained from Gary's face. Melissa suddenly became very interested in her folder. Where did you hear that? Gary asked. Is it true? That's confidential company information, so that's a yes. I leaned forward. Were you planning to tell me that before or after I accepted a 60% pay cut to train my replacement? This meeting is about your current offer, not hypothetical future restructuring. Gary said, his jaw tight. Now, do you accept the new terms or not? I took a deep breath, thought about Jonah, about our house, about 9 years of my life. 9 years of missed dinners, of birthdays spent in conference calls, of tiptoeing past my son's room at midnight because I got home too late again. And for what? For a company that couldn't even tell me the truth to my face. I felt something harden inside me, resolve. I quit. The words hung in the air between us. Gary blinked. Excuse me. I quit effective immediately. He recovered quickly, his face settling into a smug smile. I'm afraid company policy requires 2 weeks' notice from director level. Employees check my contract. I said. The original Solvara contract. That was never updated after the acquisition. It states that notice periods are equivalent to severance periods, since Solvara never offered severance beyond 1 week. That's my required notice. The smile faltered. You'll need to transition your accounts. Actually, I don't. My contract also states that, in the event of a compensation reduction exceeding 15%, all transition requirements are waived. I stood up. That was added after Ben Michaels quit and tried to hold his clients hostage for a better severance package. You might not remember that, since you weren't here, but I helped Marcus draft that clause. Gary was turning an interesting shade of red. Melissa looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. You can't just walk out on your responsibilities. Gary sputtered. Watch me. I turned to go, then paused at the door. Oh, and I've accepted a position with Helix Technologies since Solvara never implemented a non-compete agreement and Dinovex never asked me to sign one. I'll be starting there. On Monday, the explosion I expected didn't come instead. Gary's face went completely blank, which was somehow more terrifying. You've just made a serious mistake, he said quietly. We'll be reviewing all of your communications and client interactions. If we find even a hint that you've been poaching clients or sharing proprietary information, we'll bury you in litigation." I felt a chill, not because I'd done anything wrong. I hadn't, but because I knew how these things went. Big companies with deep pockets could make your life hell. Even if you were completely innocent, I haven't taken anything that doesn't belong to me. I said my client relationships, though the trust I've built over 9 years, that belongs to me, and I'm taking it with me. I walked out before he could respond, heart pounding so hard. I thought it might burst through my chest. My team was waiting at my desk, Cassie, Dylan, and Naveen, the last survivors of what had once been 8. They knew, of course, they knew news travels fast in dying companies. "Is it true?" Naveen asked. "You're leaving?" I nodded. "What about us?" Dylan looked terrified. "He had a baby on the way. Check your emails in an hour," I said quietly. "All of you." I packed my desk quickly. Family photos, the stupid world's best boss mug my team had given me as a joke. 2 Christmases ago, the emergency inhaler I kept for Jonah 9 years of my life fit into one cardboard box. Security escorted me out. Company policy for Hyla departures. They said like I was suddenly a threat, like I hadn't given almost a decade of my life to this place. I didn't cry this time, not in the elevator, not in the lobby, not even in my car. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made 3 calls, first to Elliot. "I've quit." "They took it about as well as you'd expect. We'll have legal ready," he said. "Don't worry." Second, to my old boss, Marcus Tran. He picked up on the 4th ring, sounding like he was on a beach somewhere. "Ray is everything." "Okay, not really Marcus Dinovex, just tried to cut my salary by 60%. I quit and took a job with Helix Silence." "Then I'm sorry, Ray. The acquisition wasn't supposed to go like this, but it did," I said, "and now they're threatening to sue me for accepting another job, a job that pays me what I'm actually worth." More silence. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to remind them that you never implemented non-competes at Solvara because you said, and I quote, 'If we don't treat people well enough to make them want to stay, we deserve to lose them.'" Marcus sighed. "I'll call Daniel Dinovex myself. This isn't right." My 3rd call was to Tasha West, CTO at Carlo International, our biggest client, the client whose system implementation was scheduled for next month. "Tasha, it's Ray, Martin's Ray. I was just about to call you. We need to move up the timeline on the implementation by 2 weeks." "The board, Tasha," I interrupted gently. "I'm not with Solvara anymore. As of today." The shock in her voice was audible. "What? Where are you going?" "Helix Technologies, Elliot Cross's company, our backup vendor." Yes, there was a long pause. "Is this because of the Dinovex acquisition? We've been worried about that ourselves. Service has been slipping." "It is. They're making major changes, including removing me from your account." Another pause. "Without telling us." "Yes, who's taking over the implementation?" "They wouldn't tell me," Tasha said, "and that's why I loved her. 20 years in tech had stripped away any corporate necessities. This implementation is critical for us. The board is watching it. Personally, we specifically requested you in the contract." "I know, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Send me your new contact info at Helix. We need to talk." By the time I picked Jonah up from school, I'd received 14 text messages and 23 emails. 6 from my team forwarding messages from Gary, instructing them to maintain client continuity and prepare transition documents for all my accounts. 1 from Marcus, confirming he'd spoken to Daniel Dinovex directly, and the rest from clients who'd somehow already heard I was leaving Mom. Jonah climbed into the car immediately, sensing something was different. "Why are you picking me up? It's not Friday." I turned to look at him, this beautiful, serious little boy who deserved so much better than a mother, who was always working, always stressed, always one bad month away from financial disaster. "I left my job today," I said simply. His eyes widened. "The one you're always working at, the one that makes you cry sometimes when you think I'm asleep." My heart broke a little. Of course he'd noticed. "Yeah, that one." "Good," he said firmly. "I didn't like how they treated you out of the mouths of babes. I got a new job." I told him, "One that pays better and will give me more time with you, and better insurance for your asthma medications." He considered this. "Will you be able to come to my science fair next month?" "Front row," I promised, with embarrassing signs and everything. He grinned. "Cool." That night, after Jonah was asleep, my phone rang. a number I didn't recognize. Is this Rachel Martins? A man's voice unfamiliar? Yes, this is Daniel Dinovex. I understand we have a situation. My blood ran cold. The founder and CEO of Dinovex Corporation calling me personally. Mr. Dinovex, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Yes, I suppose we do. Marcus Tran called me. He's very upset about how you've been treated. I said nothing. Waited. I've also received calls from Tasha West at Carlo and Kevin Lim at Birchman Systems, both expressing concern about your departure and hinting they may need to reevaluate their vendor relationships. Still, I waited. Memis Martins. Are you actively encouraging our clients to follow you to Helix? No, sir. I've simply informed them that I'm no longer with the company. They've drawn their own conclusions. Gary Mitchell tells a different story. Gary Mitchell offered me a 60% pay cut without any reduction in responsibilities. Didn't tell me the position was being eliminated in 8 months, and then threatened to sue me for accepting another job. So you'll forgive me if I don't put much stock in his version of events. Silence. Then the pay cut and outsourcing plan were not approved by me or the executive committee, and yet they happened. Another silence. What would it take to bring you back to repair? This situation, I almost laughed. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. Carlo and Birchman represent over $20 million in annual contracts. If they leave, others will follow. We've run the numbers. It would be significantly less expensive to keep you than to lose those accounts. Now, I did laugh, so I'm worth keeping if it costs you millions to lose me, but not if it just makes my life impossible. Do you hear yourself, Mr. Dinovex? Business is business, Miss Martins. I'm trying to offer you an opportunity here. No, thank you. I've accepted a position with Helix, one that values me appropriately from the start. Not just when you realize how badly you've screwed up, we're prepared to match their offer, plus a retention bonus. It's not about the money. I said, surprised to find. I meant it. It's about respect. It's about 9 years of my life that your company dismissed without a thought. It's about the fact that you're calling me now, not because how I was treated was wrong, but because it's becoming expensive. What do you want then? He sounded genuinely confused. I want you to treat the people who are still there better than you treated me. I want you to look at what Gary Mitchell is doing to that office and ask yourself if that's really the company you want to build. That's it. That's all you want, that. And for you to stop threatening to sue me for taking a new job. I didn't steal anything. I didn't poach anyone. I simply refused to be devalued. There was a long pause. No lawsuit. He finally said, you have my word. As for the rest, I'll be visiting the regional office next week to see things for myself. 3 days later, I started at Helix. They gave me a real office, not a cubicle, my team. Yes, I got to build my own team. Included Cassie and Dylan, who'd quit Dinovex the day after I left. Naveen stayed behind. His visa was tied to his employment there. 2 weeks after that, Gary Mitchell was pursuing other opportunities. Melissa from HR2. A month later, Tasha West called to tell me Carlo was moving their business to Helix. The implementation team they sent couldn't find their way out of a paper bag. She said, and when I complained, they told me my expectations were unrealistic. Kevin Lim from Birchman followed 2 months after that, then Langford Systems, then Neoterra by the 6-month mark. 5 of my former top 10 clients had moved to Helix, not because I poached them. I was scrupulously careful never to initiate those conversations, but because relationships matter, trust matters, and when you've spent years proving yourself, people notice when you're gone. Daniel Dinovex kept his word. There was no lawsuit. There was, however, a complete restructuring of the regional office. The overseas transition was quietly abandoned. Salaries were adjusted to better align with market standards. Too little, too late. For many, including me, it's been 3 years now. I'm still at Helix Executive, Vice President of Client Success. I have a team of 22. I make more money than I ever thought possible. But more than the title, more than the paycheck, what I carry every day is the knowledge that I rebuilt something, on my terms, from the ashes of what tried to break me. Most importantly, I make it home for dinner with Jonah. Almost every night, I haven't missed a science fair or a soccer game. In years last month, I ran into Marcus Tran at a tech conference. He gave me a hug, told me he was proud of me, said leaving Solvara was the best career move I could have made. I should have protected you all better. He said, looking genuinely regretful. I thought Dinovex would keep their promises. It's business. I said, echoing Daniel Dinovex's words to me. Nothing personal, but that's a lie, isn't it? It's always personal. Our work, our worth, our lives, they're deeply, intensely personal. Pretending otherwise is just a way for companies to treat people as disposable. The real revenge wasn't the clients who followed me. It wasn't Gary getting fired or Dinovex losing millions. It wasn't. Even my beautiful new office or my big salary, the real revenge was discovering my own value, standing up and saying, no, I am worth more than this. I deserve better, and then going out and creating that better. For myself, I think about that meeting with Melissa and Gary sometimes. That paper sliding across the desk, that moment when they thought they had all the power and I had none. They were wrong. We all have power. Sometimes we just need to be pushed to our breaking point before we realize it. So if you're watching this and you're in a job that doesn't value you, that treats you like you're lucky to be there when they're actually lucky to have. You have options, you have power, you have worth. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting back at anyone, it's about getting away and building something better. Even if it takes just one phone call to change everything. So the story is over, and our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you are, if you've made it all the way through this journey, then maybe something in it stirred your heart. Maybe you've seen a bit of yourself in Rachel, in her fear, her grit, her power. Let's talk honestly for a second. Sometimes the people we give the most to give us the least in return. Sometimes we stay loyal to companies, relationships, or systems that no longer serve us because we're scared. Scared of letting go, scared of starting over. But like the poet Nayira Waheed once wrote, you do not have to be fire to burn. You only have to be yourself. That's what Rachel did. She didn't fight fire with fire. She walked away. She built something better. Not just for herself, but for her son, for her team, and for everyone who's ever been told they're replaceable. You're not replaceable. Your work matters. Your voice matters. And yes, your story matters too. If no one's told you this lately, you are allowed to ask for more. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to rebuild from the ashes of what broke you. And if this story meant something to you, if it lit even a small spark in your chest, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep telling stories that remind you of your strength. Because maybe the real power isn't revenge at all. Maybe the real power is becoming someone who never has to beg to be valued again.